So, we're looking at the data tab. The best way to actually find out how many unique types of junctions there are would be to quickly copy my data set. So Control A, Control C, go to another sheet. So I've just pressed plus, for those of you who don't know how to do this yet, and press Control V. So I've just copied it onto this data sheet. Okay? If I want to space this out, I can do that, but it doesn't actually matter. All right, doesn't really matter what it looks like now. What I want to do now is I select my data and I choose Remove Duplicates. Okay? Then I choose what column actually has the duplicates that I want to remove. So I'm going to unselect all. The column that I'm referring to that I want to remove the duplicates from is the junction detail. That one. And then it actually tells me the answer here. 9 unique values remain. Or what I could have done is I can then just go select those and I can read the answer from the bottom of the screen. You see? Okay, so that's a cool thing I can do. Another thing I can do from here, I don't actually think I have data that's going to work nicely for that. Let me try this one. No, that's not going to work well either. This one will work. Okay. So, sometimes you need to split your data. So, for example, for whatever reason, whatever feasible reason on earth, you need to actually split this to have the M, the 60, and the 64 separate. Okay. Don't worry, you're looking at me very strangely. Trust me, you need this at some stage. Sometimes you need to split the surnames and the names. Sometimes you need, they give you messy data. Okay. Then they'll, for example, give you something like, where they tell you the age of the athlete plus what item they're participating in one column. And they separate it by something like a dash or a hash or a whatever. And you want to then split it into separate columns so that you can count how many of this or how many of that are there. Right. So the fastest way to do that is with the data tab, text to columns. As long as you have something specific splitting these things, they call it delimited. That's when there is a specific character that separates the things that can actually go into different columns. So in this instance, the space can be used as well as the dash. Okay, so I'm going to say next. I want to use the space and I want to use the dash. So you see what it does here at the bottom. It actually splits them for me into separate columns. So what I did first is I actually made space, because otherwise it actually overwrites the columns next to that. So I first inserted extra columns, and then I chose what the delimiters are. So whatever funny delimiter they give you, you can actually enter that here in other. If it's something like a hash or a question mark or whatever thing they think of. Next, now this screen I haven't needed that often, but now and then I've needed that, where I actually need to specify what the data type is of the resulting column. Okay? So, for example, if you transfer something like an ID, if you have an ID number in Excel, if you just type it in normally, it actually throws out this funny number like 64 plus E what. It throws this bizarre number out because it's too large for Excel to display. So what you want to do is you want to actually format that number as text. So here you can specify that I want to format this column, even though it contains numbers, as text. If I leave it on general, it will decide the format for me. Okay, now generally that's not a problem, but if you actually finish this step and you see, oh, it's messed up something, then you can go and redo it and go and choose the correct output format. Okay, so for those of you, for the grade 10s, just to pay attention quickly, right click, insert. And if I choose 3 columns or 5 or however many beforehand, and I then choose right click, insert, then it will insert that many. See? Okay. Right. So that's a cool trick to use, and we sometimes need that. That does not work with date. So if I wanted to split this date, the year, the month, and the day, there's actually a function that I need to use for that. And we'll look at that very soon. What I'm going to look at next, I'm not going to save that for now. Let's actually look at this data set. What are they doing down there? Okay. I just wanted to show you another thing. If I am doing a function, for those of you who know what the functions are already, if I want to determine, for example, what the maximum house points are for these different people, I can do a max. Hey, that's what I would have done, the function I would have used. So that would look like this, equals max, open my bracket. For the grade 10s, I'll give you a video that shows you the basic functions that you can have a look at. They're actually very easy when you just know the names of the basic ones. And instead of actually clicking on the first one and going down to the last one, which you can, it's not a problem, especially now that you know these shortcuts, you could also just click on the entire column. Okay, in this instance, as long as there's nothing else underneath there, it's fine. You can just click on the entire column. The only time when that will be a problem is if I am doing something like a count A on the houses. Okay, so the grade 11s and the matrics will know what I'm talking about. So count counts only numbers. It counts the number of cells that contain a number, right? Count A counts the number of cells that contains anything. So if I do the same function on the same column, I get 1 extra cell because it actually also counted the heading. See, so that's the only time when you can't refer to the whole column that you need to keep in mind. All right. Now, let's have a look at some logical tests. Logical tests, who here has IT? Okay, so you guys will know exactly what I'm talking about. And the grade 12s will have done ifs by now, so you will know what a logical test is. But you will not have seen that you can actually do a logical test outside of an if. You don't need an if to do a logical test. A logical test is when you ask a question and you actually get an answer back from the computer. So let's say I want to see how many kids got a better maths mark than their English mark. All right? I would do this. I would start the question. Any function or formula that you type in has to start with an equals, okay? So equals, and I'll say maths. I always start with just one record at a time. Is the maths mark greater than the English mark? And it tells me false or true. Okay? Now, there are 2 ways to copy this function down. The one way would be, well, this is a formula actually because I didn't use a name of a function. So the one way would be to use this black plus on the bottom green corner and drag it down. The faster way, as long as it's actually connected to my data set, I can double click and it will go down all the way. See, it's gone down all the way to the bottom. But if there was a space, if I actually did it in column M, then it will not have copied down all the way to the bottom. Then I would have had to drag it manually. See? All right, so let's determine what the answer is. How many people actually did better in their maths test than their English test? So let's see, there's two ways we can do that. Better, maths, okay. We could do that with a filter, for those of you who don't really know the functions yet, and actually count the trues, okay. And, we actually said a table is better, hey, because then we can get the answer quickly. So let's apply a table formatting, okay. In a table, once you've done table formatting, if you add additional functions next to it, it will automatically be added to the table, by the way. Okay, and let's do a total row, and we'll say we want all the trues. There are 954 learners who did better in the maths test than the English test, out of a possible 2,334. No, 33. Right? So if we want to know percentage, how many were those? That would be 954 divided by 334, hey? 334. That's 41%. Okay. All right. So for those of you who've had cats for longer than the grade 10s, you'll know I could have just done a count if, right? Okay. Count if for true. By the way, if you do that, you can't add double quotation marks around true because it's not text. It's actually a value, just like a yes-no field in Access. Okay, so I would have done, let's make sure that I start from the top. I always click on the header and then I move one row down so that I don't accidentally start from the wrong record. Did you see what I did? I didn't realize that I was on a lower row. I was on row 70 or something, and I started there. So you always click on the first row, which stays constant, and then you just click one down, and then you can go and select that and say, what is my criteria? I want all those that are true. And why is it giving me 0? Is it because it's probably because I'm doing it, there you go. Because it tried to make it a header as part of the table. All right, so that's better to actually do those in a further column. All right, so that's a basic logical test. Let's have a look at some more advanced logical tests. So that's when I do one logical test. Let me say I want to do 2 logical tests. How many females did better in their maths test than the English test? Okay, so then I need to ask an and question. So they need to pass 2 tests before I can count them. Okay, so best way is to do this. I use the and function, and you'll see what it does is it tells me I can do more than one logical test. See? So then I say, is maths greater than English, comma, second logical test, is the gender equal to female. Okay. Now, when you use text, you have to put double quotation marks. Okay. I put an extra parentheses. There you go. All right. And then I can do the same calculations to determine how many of those were female. The same thing applies for or. It looks exactly the same. The only difference is it can pass either test before it will show me a true. So in this instance, if we look at the output, this person is female, but the math test is worse than the English test, so it returned a false. This person is female, and the math test is better than the English test, and that's why it returned a true. So if I did exactly the same test, I'm going to copy this, Control C, and I do the same test, and I change this to or, you'll see my result is very different. Almost all of them are true. The only thing where it's going to give me a false is where the person is male and they did, or where they did, it's only where they are male. Because whenever it's a female, it's going to actually give me a true. Do you see? Or it's also going to give me a true when males, let's see if we can find a male that's true. There you go. It's also going to give me a true when the male did better in their maths than their English. Because or means either of these tests need to be passed for me to get a true. See? Okay, all right, so those are logical tests. Let's try that a bit. So I'm going to stop the demo, and I want you to please open the school admin. And I would like you to please tell me how many females are there that have a house point of more than 100 marks or 100 points. Okay, let's have a look. Next up, I want us to look at date functions. Okay, now I told you here, even though it looks like this date is actually split with forward slashes, that's not actually what's happened. For any of you that's done CAT for a while, you'll know that one can format a date differently. You can format a date to look like this, or you can format a date to look like that, or you can actually format a date to look many different ways. Here in the custom section, you can format it to display however you prefer. So these forward slashes actually just it's just a display way. It hasn't got anything to do with actually the data that's stored in the cell. Okay, so if I want to extract, I'm actually just for the heck of it going to copy this down a little while, a bit further so that you can see what it looks like. If I want to extract information from here, such as the year or the month or the day, once they actually asked a question, for example, on how many, it was a flight database. They asked us how many flights left on a Sunday. And there's like 3,000 records. Like how the hell? Okay, so I'll show you how you do that. It's all got to do with date functions. Okay, so you can extract information such as the date, the day, the month, and the year as solid numbers. Okay? Like this. Day, click, enter, and it tells me the day by itself. Okay. You see? So it's just given me the day. The month. In a number. Okay? So if it asks me a question like how many people's birthday is in February, I can tell you that very quickly if I know the month function. And then I can count how many twos there are. Right? Okay. Year. Same thing. Okay. That thing about which day it falls on was weekday. Now, I'm going to open the function builder for you here so that you know what happens here for the grade 10s, and I actually don't know if the grade 11s know this yet. Anytime you're busy with a function, once you've opened the open bracket, you can click on FX over here to help you with a function if you don't know what to type in there. So serial number refers to the date. Return type, you'll see, is not in bold. So that means it's an optional argument. You don't have to type it in, but you actually need this so that you can see what the weekday represents. So return type is a number. For Sunday, it's 1, and Saturday is up to 7. So Mondays, if I want to do it like this, if I want to use the American system, I need to put 1 here. If I want to use the South African system where Monday starts on 1, I need to put 2. Okay. Now, you don't actually have to change it. You just need to know that if I just leave it as the default, 1 will mean Sunday. That's all I needed to know. Okay, so that helped me figure this out. If I didn't know where to look for that, just by changing this to a long date, I can see that this is Wednesday. Do you see? And I see that the weekdays fall. So then I can figure out, oh, so that means they must have started the week on Sunday. Okay, and then I could have counted how many people or how many flights left on a Sunday. Okay. All right, so that is weekday. The same thing works for time. So if I want to extract the minutes, minute, it will give me the number of minutes. It will give me the number of hours. And it will give me the number of seconds. Okay. Right. Now, you might need that somewhere. So I've shown you that, and then sometimes, you need to know your general conversions, such as the fact that there are 365 days in a year, and there are 60 minutes in an hour, those kind of things, so that you can actually convert it from this to that. Otherwise, so like once they ask something about how many minutes does it end up in the end. So if you convert it to minutes like this, then you can do your normal calculations, but then you need to be able to convert it back into hours. Okay. In the Olympiad, just let me quickly stop there and just tell you something else. You just need to give the answers, but you have to save your work. So even though it's literally just rough work, don't delete anything you've done. You can actually, once you're done with something, you can hide it if you want. Okay? But it needs to stay there. The purpose of this is so that they can see if 2 or 3 people do go through to the next round, especially when it's the final round, they can actually, they request your data and then they check that you got to the answers in a different way. I mean, some questions you will have done the same thing because I taught you how to do that. But I mean, when I walked through you guys just now with the question I just asked you, lots of you use different ways to do that. So, especially if 2 or 3 candidates are in contest, like they're thinking about inviting them for the final round, they request their data and then they just double check that there wasn't any cheating involved, that everybody's data looks the same and they got to the answer in the same way. So you have to save your work that you've done. It's not that necessary. Sometimes they actually tell you, use this specific column, and they've actually labeled it that way. But most of the time, just don't delete the rough work that you've done to actually get to the answer. Obviously, a filter it's not able to save that. So that's fine. But the difficult questions, we actually have to use functions and things. You need to save that, please. All right. Now, let's have a look at date calculations. Now, the function for today's date, is now. Now gives me today's date and time. If I want to just find out what today's date is, I can use today with open bracket and closed bracket. So if I want to find out how old this rider is, this bike rider, I would do it as follows. I'm actually going to use this date that I've done over there. I'm going to say today's date minus the guy's birthday. What do you think that is? That's the number of days between those 2 dates. Okay, so that's how many days he is old. Can you guys tell me, how do you think I'm going to get that to years? Divide by 365. How am I going to take the leap years into consideration? How many days or how many years? It's 1 day per every 4 years, hey? So 365.25 to take the leap years into consideration. See? And there you go. That guy is 67. All right. So what I want everyone to do quickly is I want you to work out how many days you are old. So quickly in Excel, open a new sheet. So just press that little plus on the bottom. And for today's date, you can actually use a shortcut. Control and semicolon enters today's date quickly, automatically. Okay? And if you want to enter your own birth date, please pay attention. The way you type it in is the date first, so the day first, then space, the first 3 letters of the month in English. So if it's December, it must be DEC in English. Okay? And then space, then the full year. That's how you type in a date in a format that you know that Excel will not misunderstand you. Okay, so those 2 days will then look differently. Don't worry about that. That's just the formatting of them. So now please work out your age. First work out how many days you are old, and then work out your age. You'll see that order of, I'm not sure what the mathematical term is, but order of calculations is extremely important. So if you want to do all of this in one step, you actually need to use your brackets correctly. So if you want to say this minus that, you can't then just say 365.2 divide by 365.25, because then it will only divide C3. Okay, you have to first do the result of that divide by 365.25. Okay. All right. Now, next up, we have to have a look quickly at some text functions. Now, the text functions that you might need is when you need to look at a specific letter. Now, for example, if we have a look here, do you see the end? The end letter actually has CAPLETOU. Now, in the exam paper, they might tell you that that stands for something specific. And then you actually need to extract that letter by itself. Right, so you need to extract that last letter or the first letter or something like that. So text functions are quite straightforward. It looks like this. Left. That's the text. And then if we look at the syntax, comma, number of characters. How many characters do I want to extract? Let's say 2 letters. And then it will extract the first 2 letters of all the records that I'm looking at. Or right of this, let's say just 1. Now you'll see that the second part of the syntax of this function is in square brackets. That means that it's not compulsory. So if I actually close this without entering that, it will just give me 1 letter. Okay. The other one that one can do is mid. Okay. So let's say I wanted to extract this age group without the use of text to columns. I can use mid for that. So mid works like that. The first thing it asks is the text. Let's use this time. Text is the text string from which you want to extract the characters. That's the text string I want to extract from. Start num is the position of the first character you want to extract. 1, 2, 3. 3 is the first character that I want to extract. Numchars specifies how many characters to return from the text. I just want to return 2. See? All right. Last thing that I want to show you with this is find. Find is a way to give you the answer of the position of a specific character. So let's say, okay, I don't have actually something very, I don't have data that's actually going to give you an interesting representation for this. Okay, let's do this one. So it's only going to work for the RSA ones. It's not going to work for the FOR. But if I want to find out at what character RSA starts, so at what position RSA starts, I can then use find. This one is a bit different. It starts with what do I want to find? Is the text you want to find? I want to start with R. It's not case sensitive, I'm just perfectionistic. The moment I press tab, it actually included the double quotation marks for me, so that's quite nice when you use this function argument wizard thing. Otherwise, I would have had to put the double quotation marks myself. Within text is the text containing the text you want to find. So this is the text containing the text I want to find. And then start number is if you wanted to only start the search at a later character. So if you know that RSA was also at the start, but you wanted to skip that, and you only wanted to start searching from like character 4 or something, you could have done that. But in this instance, you see it's not bold, so it's not compulsory. Okay. So there it tells me then that that RSA starts from 13. So if I then wanted to use a mid to extract RSA, but I didn't know at which character RSA starts, I could have used a combination of the two functions to then help me find the position of a character.